This episode of the Beauty Industry podcast was brought to you by Beauty Events Hub, a hub for searching and advertising events in the beauty industry. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Beauty Industry podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry, connecting you with educational pieces, innovative industry products and inspiration from industry experts. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Shaw. Today we have two guests joining the podcast, of who I was recommended to record with after a friend of mine pointed them out and loved their mission. The Dermal Clinician Movement is aptly named and created by combined dermal clinicians Caylynn and Brooke. Their postgraduate education through the study of their Bachelor of Health Sciences, Dermal Therapies, Skin Health and standard creation for other dermal clinicians is something that I love seeing come to fruition and am so happy to have them join me on the podcast today. Whether you're a beauty therapist on the verge of dermal therapy, someone who has enrolled in a future course, or someone just wanting to know exactly what separates a dermal clinician from a beauty therapist, then you will enjoy today's episode. From the Dermal Clinician Movement, today we welcome Caylynn and Brooke. Thank you, Caylynn and Brooke, for coming on board the podcast today. I really appreciate you both taking the time out to have a chat.
Thank you so much for having us, Tamara. We're so excited. This is our first podcast.
You will be absolutely perfect, and our audience will be so thankful to have you on and to have all of your insight into the Dermal Clinician Movement today.
Yay, thank you.
Yay, we're so excited. So let's start at the beginning of your careers. Have you both always wanted to be dermal clinicians?
Well, so this is Caylynn. No, I actually didn't even know what a dermal clinician was, or even if it existed about 4 years ago. So initially, I actually just went into the beauty industry after disliking exercise and nutrition science at university. So mum was a beauty therapist, and I always had this interest sort of in the back of my head about it, but I never thought to pursue it straight away. And then when I did go to beauty college, I had a lecturer, actually Jennifer Hookham, who was there, and she was at the beginning or near the end probably of her degree then. And she was the one who introduced me to it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I didn't know this existed. And that's sort of where it all started for me. And I just love science. I loved health. I love aesthetics. And I just love working and helping people. So that's sort of where mine started.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I was really similar with Caylynn in terms of I didn't know what a dermal clinician was. I'd never heard of it. I didn't even know the pathway existed. So I started out completing a Cert 2 in makeup alongside Year 10 in high school, so a long time ago now. And then I got offered a beauty apprenticeship the year after and went on to complete my Cert 3 in beauty and my diploma in beauty therapy as well, whilst working across some beauty salons and day spas. But then I started actually traveling, and I went away for about nearly 2-3 years, and I actually went into hospitality and gave beauty and all that a bit of a break. And then it wasn't until when I got home I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life? I didn't want to do hospitality, and I didn't actually want to go back to beauty. And it was funny, I actually remember making this little journal, this little Bible about beauty products and ingredients and their mechanism of action and how they were exerting their effects. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, clearly I love skin, and that's what I wanted to do. And then I actually caught up with a friend who I had met through my diploma of beauty therapy, and she started telling me about this degree that she was doing. And then I looked into it. I looked at all the units. I was like, this sounds amazing. And yeah, that's pretty much where it started for me. And I applied the next week.
Fantastic. I love that you've both been inspired by other people, because this industry can be, as you said, Brooke, can, kind of come in and out of inspiration sometimes. And only when you leave and you have a chat and you see what other people are doing, then you want to get straight back into it.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
Definitely.
Can you describe for me the pathway that one takes into becoming a dermal clinician?
So to become a dermal clinician specifically, we know that we need to be a full member of the Australian Society of Dermal Clinicians, which is our governing body, as well as have the bachelor qualification from Victoria University. However, in saying this, we do know, actually currently we're speaking with the people on the board that they're in the middle of updating their constitution and how it all works, to also include the other dermal degrees that have sort of arose, so like Torrens University as well. And then the title Dermal Therapist it's a title more for the individuals who've undertaken an advanced diploma sort of in dermal therapies, and then they become associate members of the ASDC. So that's our main governing body. And Brooke and we studied through Victoria University. So we know that this university was the first and the longest running sort of qualification in this area, in this degree. And when we did this, we were just blown away by all the knowledge and the critical thinking and the higher education that came there this way, with this bachelor. So it is a 4-year degree, and it does require a lot of time and dedication and study, like most bachelors do, I guess. And I think, though, Brooke and I can agree that it was definitely the best thing that happened, especially for me. I definitely can't look back. It was so good.
Incredible. And so you go from beauty therapist into dermal therapist, and then when you become a qualified ASDC, then you are the terminology of dermal clinician.
Yeah, that's correct. You become a full member.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of confusion around dermal therapists, dermal clinicians. I'm so glad that you've cleared that up for us. And recently we were speaking and wrote a blog post actually with the lovely Jennifer, all about that, what is the title and who can call themselves a dermal clinician, or who is a dermal therapist or paramedical therapist. And I think, as you said, there's not specific amounts of governance at the moment, but I love that the ASDC is looking into providing more of an umbrella kind of look at the industry and having those other qualifications, not just Vic Uni, but Torrens Uni and things like that, as you've mentioned, which is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And because I think like what you said, it does get really confusing, which is why when that question, it is a tricky question to answer, because we obviously want to make sure that we are answering it correctly, and we are. I think, but like you said, you've had Jennifer Hookham get on and talk to you guys about the different titles, because it definitely does get really, really confusing. There's beauty therapist, dermal clinician. A lot of people aren't aware, I guess, of what the qualifications are, what you can call themselves. So yeah, it's good to talk to the ASDC, I guess, and clear it up, which is what you've done and what we've done as well, because it does get really confusing.
Amazing. So for our audience, if you haven't read that blog post, it's called Paramedical Therapist, Yay or Nay. And if you're traveling along out there thinking, what is my official title and what can I call myself, you can jump onto the Beauty Industry blog and have a read for that. So ladies, why not finish your studies at beauty therapy? What made you advance into dermal therapies and then furthermore into dermal clinician?
Well, for me personally, I just didn't want to do beauty therapy treatments anymore. I didn't really enjoy it, and to be honest, I wasn't really that good at it. I wanted more extensive knowledge, like regarding anatomy and physiology, and I wanted to delve into biology and chemistry to understand more specifically the skin. But as well, I found too that I just wanted to mainly, like I said, do skin. So that's where a Bachelor of Health Science, majoring in Dermal Science, is exactly that. It bridges the gap between nursing and dermatology. And as well, after completing the degree now and knowing what I now know and the knowledge and the skill set and where I'm heading, I don't think beauty therapy, I know beauty therapy unfortunately wouldn't have gotten me there. So for example, Caylynn and I have just started studying dermoscopy. So dermoscopy is the study of benign and malignant lesions, and one of the entry requirements was that you had to be a registered GP or specifically a university qualified nurse or dermal clinician.
And same, I second definitely what Brooke has said, because I also just wanted to know everything I could about skin, except I didn't want to go on to be a dermatologist because that's 12 years of study and I don't know if I could do all that. But so the Bachelor was just a perfect fit. It was nice in between. So it really gets into the intricacies of skin and science and cosmetic chemistry. So I like being able to manipulate and change the function of the skin to get it to where it wants to be or where you would like it to be. Because, the first year of the degree is very much around the health science subjects, which is also completed in other allied health and science degrees. So we all sort of have a good base starting point, and then as you sort of major or specialize, you can go down the different areas. And so with Dermal Clinicians, you skin and wound care, and also definitely go into a lot of laser and light physics extensively. So for example, just our laser and light physics, we actually did 4 units of this, which equates to about 50 weeks of just laser alone. So it was a very dry subject, but interesting and just full on as well. So we're very well equipped, hopefully, in the laser department.
Yeah, amazing. And that's quite phenomenal that you've said there, 4 weeks or 4 units, as opposed to a beauty therapist who could do a 2-day course and then come out and technically laser. I love that, you do have all of that qualification. You've got experience, and you've got the light and the physiology behind the light and the laser and IPL, and you've got the health sciences kind of background. And so for you, I'm assuming it makes a lot of sense in having that cellular change or having that hair shaft, go through the hair stages, whereas I guess sometimes it can be confusing for a beauty therapist who has, just come out of their beauty therapy diploma and gone straight into laser. Perhaps just after that 2-day course, maybe they don't completely understand the entire physics or the understanding of the theory side behind why they're doing the treatments and how they're doing the treatments.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is why we're so for becoming a dermal clinician, and also just doing the degree, because the knowledge is so extensive. Like it is really into, you go through atoms and protons. It is very, very advanced. So sometimes even now when I work, like I haven't really learnt the whole talking in layman's terms. Sometimes I'll talk and my clients are like, what the hell is she talking about? Because I haven't figured out how to talk to people that they'll understand what I'm talking about, if that makes sense. Because it was just so in depth. But yeah, it was amazing. It was hard, but it was really good. And I think that's a point of difference as well, is that we have done 4 different units, and 4 different units a semester, and a semester runs for 12 weeks. And yeah, it was a lot. It was definitely a lot.
And we're talking there about health sciences and dermal sciences, and as you said, some of the content can be a little dry. And one of the most common questions I get asked about studying dermal science is, how hard was it? So in your opinion, what is the level of difficulty that the study is?
So I think just completing a bachelor full stop definitely comes with challenges and difficulties, because it is that higher education sort of work. But as cliche as it is, I think if you love what you're doing, it definitely is the driver to push you through and keep you going. I definitely found it was really content heavy, so very much like textbook work and things as well. There was a lot of practical, of course, but very content heavy because of the biology and the chemistry and the laser physics. So it was a bit overwhelming initially, and going, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to fit all these things in my brain, really? But and in saying all this, I wouldn't look back, like I said. And the lecturers we had, we couldn't talk more highly of them. They were just such good mentors as well. They weren't just there to sort of teach you. They mentored you. They were always available to chat. So this helped so much, especially towards the end when you're almost there, but you're not quite. So we're very grateful for our lecturers that were there to support us.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. I personally, I didn't find it that easy, especially when I first started. We were actually laughing about it earlier. I'm talking about one of the subjects that we did. It was one of the first dermal science subjects we did. And I actually remember literally sitting in the bathtub and crying because I had no idea what I was doing. But no, it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of dedication, and you did always feel like there was not enough time in a day. But in saying that, Caylynn and I, we put 110% into everything that we did. So we were those students that literally studied every single day, 8 hours a day, because we did want to excel. But not even that we wanted to excel, we wanted to understand. Like, if you were to ask a lecturer now about us, and they would be like, oh my God, those girls, they wanted to understand the nitty and gritty of every single thing. So I think we studied around usually 30 to 40 hours a week, and sometimes more, especially if it was around exam time. However, in saying that, we both did it full time, so we were enrolled in as full-time students. So being full-time, you do 4 units a semester. A semester runs for 12 weeks, and usually you do have lectures, tutorials, sometimes up to 4 essays that are around 1,500 to 2,000 words. And some of the units I even remember in third year, you actually had pre-lectures before the actual lecture. So it was a lot. And I think if I honestly was to do it again, I would go part-time. But
some good advice.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're here, and, we graduated in December and it's so awesome. But I think if I was to go back in time, I maybe would have done it part-time, so I didn't put so much pressure on myself.
That's fantastic advice for any of our audience who's listening there. We will be back with more of the Beauty Industry podcast after this short message from our sponsors. Are you sick of seeing industry events days after they've been hosted? Beauty Events Hub is an online hub to make sure you never miss an industry event again. Search for and advertise your beauty industry events all in one place. Head to www.beautyeventhub.com or at Beauty Events Hub on social media. What are some of your favourite subjects that you learnt about in a degree?
This is a hard one. I really liked our Dermal Science unit. So we had 3 different Dermal Science units with a lecturer called Claire Simpson, and she was amazing. She's specialises in microbiology. So her understanding and her depth of knowledge was awesome. So we started off doing Dermal Science 1 in year 1. And that was kind of just a really good introduction to the degree itself. So it introduced you to medical terminology. You touched base again on anatomy and physiology, all the different bodily systems like your cardiovascular, your muscular system. You went over tissue biology and cellular biology, and went quite in depth to the cell itself. So the nucleus, protein, cell division, like mitosis, meiosis, and stuff like that. And then the other Dermal Sciences kind of carried on from there and carried on from the knowledge that you'd gained from the Dermal Science 1 unit. I think that was with a lot of the units, though, in general. Like, you always did carry on from the unit that you'd done prior. So Dermal Science 2 was really about cellular damage and tissue repair. So your primary, secondary, and delayed intention healing, your acute and chronic inflammation, innate and acquired immunity. We did skin biochemistry, embryology development, and it started to introduce you to neoplasia, which you then went into in Dermal Science 3. So you went into skin cancers and stuff like that. But then Dermal Science 3 was really quite chemistry based, which I remember the first 3 weeks I was thinking, oh my God, this is extremely hard, because it was about your atoms and your molecules, your chemical bonds, your hydrogen bonding, your acids and your bases, macromolecules and stuff like that. Even though I say that now, but I really enjoyed them, because I guess by the time you got to the end and studying them and revising them and asking you questions, you really do start to understand everything and stuff like that. But and one more favourite that I had was probably in 4th year. We did a unit called Plastics and Reconstruction. And this was more so if you were to go down that environment in work in a multidisciplinary environment with plastic surgeons and nurses. So it opened you up to learning about surgical terminology, not just, obviously we're not performing the procedure, but it's more so if you're going to be talking to a plastic surgeon, you can talk their language and you can understand what they're talking about and talk back to them. So it was a really good introduction about plastic surgeons in general, implements that they may use, because obviously we would then be taking care of the skin pre and post-op. And then by having knowledge of what the implants were used, dermal clinicians would then be able to determine why the wound or the skin may be presenting how it is. But I also really liked that we went into Botox and fillers again. Same, that I know that this is not what we will be doing. Like, we don't do Botox or fillers. That's cosmetic nurses and stuff like that. But it's just so that we're aware of what's out there. If someone was ever to ask us a question while we're at work, we can kind of be like, okay, like, we understand if it's like the fillers in the dermal or subdermal or supraperiosteal placement, or if it's a xenograft, autograft, or synthetic material. But Yeah, I've rambled enough now, Caylynn.
Lots of information there. I love it. And I love that you've said there's kind of a phase between the subjects, because sometimes I know people are excited and they want to study dermal therapies, for example, or any course, and they'll jump on and they'll have a look at all the different subjects or the core subjects and, you know, see that, you know, plastics or muscle or whatever, and they will think, oh my gosh, I don't know that knowledge now, so I don't think I can do the degree. But I love that you've broken that down and said, you know, there's a course 1 and a course 2 and a course 3, 4, for example, so that you are building each time on that progressive learning. It's not just a here you go, let's start learning about plastic surgery and Botox. You know, you're really breaking it down and kind of learning step by step, which I love.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, and I also really liked similar subjects to Brooke. I think I'm definitely biased. I loved a lot of them, but some of the standouts for me were probably the laser subject. I just find lasers really interesting, especially trending at the moment. So it's very relevant. We had a subject called Advanced Laser 1. So this is sort of where we really delved into the nitty gritty towards the end as well. And in Advanced Laser 1, we learned like about pigmentation, and then not just pigmentation that might present, but also the pathway on how maybe a pigment will actually come about. So the eumelanin and pheomelanin pathways and the biosynthesis of that, and the whole epidermal melanin unit, and all of that. And then the target chromophores. So what kind of wavelengths would be used for different pigment, you know, different levels of pigment in the skin. And then we went from maybe the thermal techniques with laser, so there's the photothermal pathways to remove pigment, but also photomechanical, so that's using Q switching and all of that. So we've also very much drilled into outlining like the causes of the etiologies, the pathophysiologies, the clinical manifestations of all these different pigmented lesions, so then we can also recognize treatment planning for different patients. So there was the pigment, and then we did vascular with the laser. And that was really interesting too, about learning, you know, the actual mechanism of action. So when that light is actually put onto that lesion, if you like, what actually happens on a biological level, and again, the appropriate wavelengths for it. And then the treatment planning for that. And then we did the non-ablative rejuvenation. So this is sort of where I'm finding it's very trending. So like laser genesis sort of thing. So that's when we do non-ablative work, it's using water as a chromophore in the skin. And this was really interesting because mostly when we're targeting other like pigmented or vascular lesions, these are like colored things that we're targeting. So pigments are brown and brown colors, if you like, and the vessels is like the red and the hemoglobin. But with water in the skin, it's clear. So we sort of learned also how that is actually a chromophore for the skin. And then how that becomes a rejuvenating procedure by utilizing that chromophore as water. And then we did the radio frequency, so the non-light-based stuff for non-ablative rejuvenation. So that was cool too. I really found that interesting, and also how you can sort of work them together. And then low-level laser. So that was on the other spectrum where we've got the high-powered laser. Then we've got the low-level or the low-powered lasers where we use that in something called photobiomodulation. That's just all about wound healing and decreasing inflammation to get, an effect of in that way, and not sort of resurfacing maybe. And that was interesting. So that's where we have a different type of target where we've got in the mitochondria of cells, we've got a cytochrome C oxidase, and this is where it all starts for low-level laser, and how the processes then result from that in healing and increasing healing and tissue strength. So that's also interesting with the rise in inflammatory skin conditions. We find, low-level laser or LED as well. It's really interesting to figure out the mechanism of action there. So they go into a lot of detail. We really learn, definitely specific things regarding a lot of those. Yeah.
Amazing. So there's so many pathways, obviously, that you guys can go through. We talked about dermoscopy, we've got plastics, we've got assisting nurses, we've got laser, senior clinicians. There's so many different pathways that you can learn, and it sounds like you've learned so much as well. Where do each of you see your career progressing from here?
So I personally, and actually Brooke as well, like we said earlier, we've branched into dermoscopy as another tool for our trade, if you like, while we also work in a skin clinic. So I definitely feel, as much as Brooke, we feel it's just imperative to know dermoscopy in our work. So as I mentioned, I loved lasers and things with uni, and even though it's such a trend right now, we've got to be careful because, you know, on a daily basis we might treat hyperpigmentation or polyposis of Savat, and all of this, even though these are common skin conditions, there could be things underlying. So, for example, BCCs, which are the non-melanoma skin cancers, they have these arborizing vessels, and they can just look like telangiectasia to the naked eye. So we could just be happy, you know, lasering away and removing all these telangiectasias, if you like, and we're coagulating this blood and we're removing it. So then we're actually removing a differentiating property of a BCC when a dermoscopist might need to go and look at it. So this is so detrimental, and it's just come to our knowledge like, wow, we really need to know the dermoscopy side of things too if we're going to be lasering. So not only can dermal clinicians go into the area of skin cancer, we can assist, like we've said before, all the other health professionals, and definitely work in a multidisciplinary field, I think, is the big key. Like in our degree, we really learn the importance of multidisciplinary environment, so everyone sort of works together, so networking and working collaboratively, just so the patient gets the best outcome, really.
Yeah. So like Caylynn said, we've both gone into dermoscopy. We're both really, really passionate about it. And so we work with Skin Smart Australia, as we work casually with Skin Smart Australia. So we're both really lucky, even though Caylynn's in Brisbane and I'm in Melbourne, that we both are employed under the same company, which is really good. But then I think eventually I would like to work within a plastic surgery and help assist patients pre and post-operatively, and also with the management of scars. But I just feel like at the moment, if you were to go ahead and do that, and hypothetically you were the only dermal clinician there, you really would have to know your stuff extremely well, because obviously you can't go to a dermatologist or you can't go to a plastic surgeon and be like, oh, hey, I don't actually know this. Can you come help me? Because really you have to know your own profession. Then they know their profession, we know our profession. So I feel like at the moment working in dermal therapies clinics with other dermal clinicians, and we're really lucky because we have really good mentors, they're kind of prepping us and helping us work our way up, because work our way up to that level. But yeah, I've known we've got a few other dermal clinicians that have gone down different pathways. For instance, some have specialised in lymphedema. We have a really good friend, Fiona Moss, who does medical tattooing for areola tattooing post-mastectomy. And then, of course, there's aesthetics as well.
Amazing. I just love the fact that you are both saying, you know, we have already learnt laser, we've learnt LED, we've learnt, you know, vascular lesions and pigment removal, but you're still wanting more. Like, I can hear your craving of knowledge, and obviously that's through both your passion as well. I love that you haven't just learnt something and gone, fantastic, I'm an expert, I'm going out into the field today treating. You know, you're still like, but why? And I think that's where the best therapists are definitely developed through that need. And it sounds like you're both really good friends as well. So that's really nice to come out of, uni and have a best friend, I guess. And so now you've created the Dermal Clinician Movement. So tell us all about that and all about you both and how that's working in the industry.
Yeah, so this dermal clinician movement it's just funny thinking about it, because we were actually studying. So like you said, we're very grateful. Brooke and I are really good friends. We did meet through the degree, and we just clicked instantly. But we were, every day we really studied through Skype for our study and our exams and our assignments and all of that. But towards the end of last year, before we graduated, we were just getting so excited about, oh my gosh, it's coming to an end. You know, we want to make waves, we want to get out in the industry, we want to show our passion, all of this. So all of that just made us excited, and we just decided right there and then, like in the middle of study, to create this Instagram page. Like, we dropped all this study, like, okay, quickly, let's make it. And at the time, we didn't really have much time to work on it because we really had other priorities. But we wanted something to come back to as soon as we finish, something that a platform we can sort of dive into a little bit. So our goal of it, I guess, was is to raise awareness for dermal clinicians, because like you said, Tamara, it can be a grey area on like what to title yourselves. So it was for that, and also to educate others on what we do and what we know, and to reach out like-minded people and industries and sort of collaborate and support each other, and just simply that. So
yeah, I think it as well for me. I also see it as a page just to promote, purely because, like many others, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, I didn't actually know what a dermal clinician was when I was younger, and I didn't know that this pathway existed. And now knowing all like the pathways that I have, that I'm going down and everything that I'm doing at the moment, I just want to make it a place and an Instagram page for people to be like, oh wow, like what is this? Like that's really cool. I didn't like just give, I guess, raise awareness that, you know, this pathway does exist and you can do it too.
Fantastic. Well, I can tell you hand on heart that has happened, because I have 3 beautiful friends who are all studying dermal therapies at one actually in Melbourne Vic Uni, and the other in Sydney, and all 3 of them separately said to me, you need to have a chat to these Dermal Clinician Movement ladies, because we love what they're doing, and so interested to hear more from you. So it sounds like your Instagram page that you started on the side, mind you, is definitely creating waves in the industry. So that's pretty fantastic.
That's so exciting.
Nice. That's so kind.
That's okay. When you guys talk about creating standards for the industry and for the movement, what do you mean by doing so?
Well, so at the moment, we are a self-regulated industry, and we're governed by the Australian Society of Dermal Clinicians, so the ASDC. So for us, for Brooke and I, creating standards, it just means that we value the knowledge and the expertise of dermal clinicians, I guess, who have done that bachelor level study of health science. And yeah, that's it, really. I mean, what do you think, Brooke?
And also, and well, as well, because dermal clinicians, they are a relatively new industry. Like the profession has only been around, I think, for about 15 to 20 years in Australia, and it actually came about. It came about due to the equivalent of a dermal clinician over in Norway and their recognition in healthcare systems and medical fields for treating things like inflammation, like acute and chronic skin conditions and stuff like that. So, however, what they found in Australia was that there's actually a lack of qualified practitioners in this area, because there weren't enough dermatologists, and unfortunately nurses, although they go over the integumentary system, they're not specifically trained in skin. So that's how the degree came about. So we just really want to be advocates for dermal clinicians and I guess promote safe practice. So like how we were talking about dermoscopy before, and just making sure that clients and patients, they are going out and getting their skin and mole mapping checks, because if you're not aware of like hypothetically when Caylynn said the example before about a BCC, having those vessels switched to anyone and to us as well, we would have just been like, oh, it's AJ, let's get our IPL out. Like no one really knows. Like, but when we put our dermatoscope, which is our little magnified device that we have over the lesion, that's really it's removing one of the differentiating properties that we would see to be like, okay, this is actually a basal cell carcinoma. So we just really want to be advocates for dermals and promote safe practice.
Amazing.
I guess.
And so just to finish off today, I'd love to get your advice for a beauty therapist who is thinking about progressing their studies towards the Bachelor of Health Science and Dermal Therapies. What would your advice be if they are kind of teetering on the edge and haven't quite made the leap into going down that study pathway?
So my advice would be, thinking back to how I was feeling, like if you're interested, if you have a small even inkling about it, and you're eager to sort of dive into maybe acute and chronic skin conditions, and also potentially work alongside those other health professionals like the surgeons and the dermatologists, then 100% go for it. You can definitely do it. There's definitely a big component of just knowing the other health professionals' lingo, so then you are confident in that environment. But you can do it, and find a buddy like Brooke. Me and Brooke were very lucky to meet, and have also met some other such amazing girls that are just also like-minded and everything. So it was so good to find a buddy and just dive into it. It works amazingly to work together and discuss ideas, and it's 100% achievable. So I wouldn't look back, and I think you should just go for it.
Fantastic advice there, Caylynn.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say find a buddy. We were both really fortunate that we met in year one, in semester one, and then ever since then we've literally joined at the hip. So through the stresses, through the tears, through the laughter, we've been through it all together. But I would also, thinking back now, I would also just recommend to just be really organised and have really good time management skills, because time does slip away so quickly. Like it'll be Monday, week 1, and then before you know it, Sunday, and you're going into week 2. So just make sure, like, write yourself schedules and stuff like that. But also I found reading your lecture notes prior to actually going into the lecture or listening to the lecture helps as well, because then if there's something that you're not aware of, you can highlight it, you can ask the lecturer. But the big thing for us that we found is summarising your lecture notes, because obviously lecture notes can be 20 to 45 pages long, and if you're studying 4 units, that's really a lot, and 12 weeks worth of it. And then at the end, you have to do your theory exams. So we found that summarize your lectures. And yeah, because it really comes into play later on in the later years. Like in year 4, you do a unit called DCP, which is Dermal Clinical Practicum, I think it is in the account. Yeah. And you have to bring knowledge from every unit that you've done over the 4 years. Wow. So it's good that if you've summarised your notes, like Hannah and I made this little Bible, which took us forever to make, but it's pretty much a summary of the degree, because when you do go into that unit, you have to know that the lecturers can just throw anything at you, and you have to know the etiology, the pathophysiology, the clinical appearances, the mechanism of action of the modality that you're using, and you have to be able to use that knowledge from the past 4 years. So summarize your notes.
That's great advice as well, because sometimes people don't learn auditory, for example, in lectures, or they don't learn by just listening and hearing things. So for me, I'm a writer, and that's where my information sinks in, is when I do write out and summarize and put it into my own language. Otherwise it just sits there in the back of my mind as somebody else's words that actually don't make too much sense.
Yeah, and it has to be in your own words for you to remember. Like, we used to make up sentences and stuff like that. We'd make songs up to remember different words. Like, and I also remember in year 1, because in year 1, I think it's a really big eye opener, because it's introducing you, like I said earlier, to all medical terminology. You're learning a whole new language. And I remember in year 1, I would watch lectures, and then I would YouTube. We both utilised YouTube a lot in the first 2-3 years. And then obviously towards the end, we got, Khan Academy. Khan Academy was amazing. And then, towards the end, I guess we were used to the hustle and the bustle. But
fantastic. So for anyone who doesn't know where to find you ladies and wants to learn more about you and being a dermal clinician and kind of brush up on their knowledge and their education, where can they find you across social media?
So at the moment, we just have our Instagram and our email, really. So our Instagram is the Dermal Clinician Movement, and our email is also dermalclinicianmovement@gmail.com. So it's very original, but it's just simple, and that's probably the best way to go about finding us.
Absolutely, too easy. And I'll make sure we pop in all of the show notes, and of course tag you guys across everything once the episode goes live, so that people can just click on through and find both Brooke and Caylynn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for attending and sharing all of your knowledge. You've definitely, if I wasn't so old already and into my career, I would be doing a Bachelor of Dermal Sciences and Dermal Therapies tomorrow.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome to hear. Thank you, Tamara. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's been really good fun.
Thanks so much, ladies. You've just heard from Caylynn and Brooke from the Dermal Clinician Movement. That episode provided me clarity around the difference between a dermal therapist and a dermal clinician, and also the pathway and dedication it takes to study a bachelor. If you have any questions around dermal clinicians, the bachelor, or more info, feel free to comment on our Instagram or Facebook page, and we will have all of those questions best answered for you by the ladies. As always, feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about beauty industry and this podcast if you've enjoyed today's episode. Until next time, stay connected.